It is Tuesday. Welcome to 15 days into July. We're just about 9:07 a.m. And hey, Google, hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. We're coming to you with extra signal strength and signals on the FM side as well, up into Maine, Portland, Maine, York, Kittery, good morning, Portsmouth, Rye, Dover, Hampton, Rochester, up to Spalding. We have you covered in the Lakes region as well, including 107.3 FM. And additional strength in the Lakes region, 98.3 FM HD2 and 107.7 FM. Everywhere else, hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. We have a muggy hot one for you, and you can feel that humidity in the air, and it's going to be hot the next few days. We're back into the hot stuff. And thank you, Canada. Maybe it's because of the trade tariff stuff. I'm totally kidding, being sarcastic. It's not. Retaliation from the Canadians. On the Canadian wildfires, smoke and haze on top of the humidity. Thank you very much, Canada. We'll try and figure out how you can get those fires out, but we're going to see more of the smoke and haze from that. So it's a hot, hazy one the next few days, J-Dog. See through the haze. J-Dog's got his incredibly brand new 2025 All-Star baseball stuff on today, the hat and the T-shirt after the home run derby last night. So J-Dog is all spiffed out in the all-star stuff for today, and I didn't even ask him how much it costs. It looked expensive. We have a packed show for you. We have the latest inflationary numbers out. Doug Tengden, World Market Advisor, is usually with us on Mondays, one of our great partners and sponsors out of the gate this morning. We'll talk more about the trade tariff stuff as well. We have a manufacturer joining us in the next segment from Novell Ironworks on the Seacoast talking about trade and tariffs. Holly Novoleski, it's a great one to talk to. And then also an update on that Berlin, New Hampshire murder-suicide. We told you yesterday after two executive counselors were live on the show complaining about this magistrate who allowed a husband involved in a pretty violent history of domestic stalking and sexual physical abuse not to be out on bail, and he was, and police say he killed his wife and took his own life. We're going to update Chief Justice Gordon MacDonald ordering a full judicial review of that process. So we'll keep you updated on that. But Doug Tengden out of the gate, inflationary numbers, and not surprising, nothing has felt more affordable for me when I've been out and about in the last month. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Jack.
Well, your thoughts. Tell us the numbers and what surprised or not?
I am not surprised. The core was less than expected, modestly less. The core was expected to be up 0.3. Instead, it was up 0.2. Year over year, the core is still up almost 3%, 2.9%. But it's not anything to terribly worry anyone about. Inflation is coming down. There's concern about tariffs, but the tariffs are going to be less than everybody expected because it turns out that the importers had more of a margin than they thought, and consumers are stretched. So with stretched consumers, you simply can't pass through the price increases the way they could during COVID.
Yeah, interesting. I just, I know it's also going to turn. I'm sure President Trump will be putting more pressure on the Federal Reserve, but I don't think they'll feel it to lower interest rates maybe next month. Do you think that's a likelihood or not, like 0.25%?
I don't think the Fed is going to lower interest rates. No, I don't think that's going to happen. What the president is doing is he's putting pressure on Jerome Powell to resign. There is some word that they're going to try and get him out in May so he can put a new person in. And Scott Bessent has said there's an orderly process to look for a replacement. My money is on Kevin Warsh.
Interesting. All right, Doug. And then I guess the whole trade tariff stuff heating up again. The president will be going.
And this time the market is not freaking out. The reason they're not freaking out is the last time the president did not take into account trade finance. And if you immediately raise tariffs, it causes a financial crisis. This time they're doing it smart. They're saying if we're going to increase tariffs by 30%, which is large, no question, but it will be implemented over, down the line. It won't be implemented effective immediately. That was the reason why we had the tariff panic in April. It was a proto financial crisis. That's what it was.
Doug, finally, it's not on our list of this morning's news. Well, it is. John Decker, our own White House correspondent, will be joining us. But the president's going to be going to Pennsylvania today, talking about trying to really make that region in that state a hotbed for data centers and AI, artificial intelligence. What amazes me on this whole AI stuff, Doug, and I wanted to get your take on this, is I don't remember a time, well, maybe once or twice with high tech, but this one, the big companies are so all in on just producing more data to support artificial intelligence and have these data centers. And the big companies are buying up small companies. This is a very serious gobbling up. And some of these companies, some of the big ones, not just NVIDIA, but I'm talking like Microsoft, IBM. These are big companies. Google. What's your take on? It seems like the AI wave is inevitable. It's already started, but it just is the growth. Is it surprising you the big companies that are going all in on this so quickly and so strongly and aggressively?
Oh, it does not surprise me. I think the potential for these large language models is immense, particularly in coding, where I have very close family connections. The productivity gains have been immense in the software space. That's why Microsoft is able to lay people off while at the same time they're growing their activity. But I'll just say the law of bureaucracy and diminishing returns. No one's going to repeal that. And so as these huge companies becomes larger, they can't avoid becoming more bureaucratic. And that creates opportunities for smaller firms that can be more agile to innovate and create something truly revolutionary.
All right. Thanks for the time, Doug.
Jack, you have a great rest of your week.
Yep. Now, X was down a little bit, but our poll question up on X when it's ready at the Pulse of an H will be, are you concerned inflation is not coming down the consumer side of the cost and prices of goods? It seems like it's sort of stuck. I just know one thing. The sad thing is, it's not just inflation naturally coming down, but I think some, and I don't mean to say this, but I think some places just kind of keep prices high or raise prices just because they can. But the cost of labor, the cost of doing business seems to be very high these days, obviously. Not obviously, just it is. Hey, real quick, I want to give you an update. We've had John Stephen, executive counselor, Joe Kenny yesterday, the mayor of Berlin, New Hampshire. This murder-suicide in Berlin, New Hampshire, just one of those stories that just really bothers most people and catches your eye because it was the classic case of violent, extreme domestic abuse in a marriage. I mean, this was a case where the woman who was killed by police say by her husband at the restaurant in Berlin, New Hampshire. The funeral was just this past week and was so well thought of in the community. She was trying to get away. She got away from the guy and he wouldn't let go. There were all kinds of criminal charges. Police did their job. They arrested him several times. Sexual assault, physical assault, kidnapping. At one point he held her 90 minutes. She was terrified, stalking, all this stuff. And then he was allowed out on bail. When the prosecutors said, don't do this, they not once, but twice in July, they said, hold this guy, do not let him out. And a magistrate did. John Stephen and Joe Kenny have been very concerned about the use of these magistrates who are not judges, usually on the weekends. They're part of the court system. They're employees. And, as John Stephen said yesterday, that this woman likely would have been alive if he had been kept in jail until the trial. So New Hampshire Supreme Court, we have an update yesterday we had on the show, and I'll repeat this to keep this on the front burner. Chief Justice Gordon MacDonald has designated Associate Supreme Court Justice Melissa Countway and Judge Ellen Christo, Administrative Judge of the Circuit Court, to review the court record with all related matters in the cases of the state versus Michael Gleason Jr. That was this guy's name. The judicial branch will work with the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Committee to the extent the committee examines the circumstances in these cases. I got news for you. This was the most clear example of domestic violence fatality that you could write in a paper. So I hope they do something about this. Now, one thing that frustrates me is we've not been able to find out if this one magistrate who John Stephen told Good Morning New Hampshire show, yours truly, here on the Pulse of an H Friday and yesterday, was the same magistrate who allowed an individual in the north end of Manchester who stabbed someone 7 or 9 times, just crazy, started stabbing someone 7 or 9 times, released that individual on personal recognizance. So John Stephen wants her dismissal, but we can't find out if the magistrate is on administrative review during this period. No one seems to have an answer. I'd like one. I think you might too. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about a manufacturer on the seacoast, Novell Ironworks, but what they're seeing, because they're on the front line of building stuff, big stuff. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. J-Dog on the boards. Jack Heath. Hot and humid and muggy. Back in a moment.
The Boston Red Sox are back. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
You know, our next guest, and I'm delighted to have her on, is I think a good example why news talk radio is growing and TV news and other media is shrinking is because you can get into the beef. So with all this talk about the economy, you just heard the inflationary numbers, yours truly thought it might be good instead of all these economic experts and analysts to have on a person who does probably more than she talks. And this is the 1956 family company in the Seacoast. I thought I'd reach out to a real super duper company that makes stuff in terms of structural engineering, steel, metal and decks, buildings, erecting buildings, the metal stuff that you see when you see a big building. Novell Ironworks over in the Seacoast, second generation family owned company that has been basically, furnishing, erecting structural steel, the steel structures to build big buildings since 1956. Holly Novoleski is the CEO, the head of that. And she joins us because I want to get a feel with all this talk about tariffs, trade, cheaper steel, all this stuff. You, if anyone would know what's happening. Good morning, Holly. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, Hampshire, the pulse of an age.
Good morning. Nice to be with you this morning. And I'm going to use you as a commercial from now on.
Well, no, but you got a great anyone who drives over 95, when you go into Greenland, Portsmouth on the right, you'll see that big steel, sort of joint or big bar, what do you call it? A frame in the field that says Novell Ironworks, 1956. How did it all start, Holly?
So that's our gantry crane. So that's our outside crane. My dad started the business. He had been in Merrill's Marauders and during World War II. And I think like a lot of the men who came home from World War II, a lot of undiagnosed PTSD. So it took him a while to figure out what he wanted to do. And then in his mid to late 30s, he started fabricating stairs and rails in the back of his father's junkyard in Massachusetts, in Malden, Massachusetts. And from there, he grew it. Now we provide the infrastructure for the skyscrapers in Boston, hospitals, used to be malls when we had malls, but universities, dormitories, anything from a house beam up to a building downtown Boston.
And Holly, I was going to say, I imagine the demand for your company and product and expertise varies with commercial real estate markets because you build big stuff. But as you said, some homes will have that steel beam going across the middle or foundation. So I guess it's residential too. But bottom line, how are you finding this economy in terms of the cost of doing business?
So we've been having, since NAFTA really, we've been really struggling with foreign trade in New England specifically, because we've been fighting Quebec. Quebec has targeted our market, and it has gotten significantly worse over the years. During the first Trump Trump administration, he put in the tariffs for steel and aluminum. That was to protect the mills, our domestic mills, because they were producing less than 70% of their capacity. And what we found was that foreign competition very quickly realized that if they punch a hole or drill a hole into a piece of steel, now it comes in under a different import code, which comes in as fabricated, and that's what we do. We do fabricated steel. So we buy from the mills, we fabricate it. So the influx of foreign steel just got pushed downstream. And with these new tariffs, they're not really new. What they did was they were trying to get rid of the exemptions and the quotas that were the loopholes in the first administration. And that was helping us initially. But we're finding again, there's another little loophole. There's an annex on that steel and aluminum tariff that has exemptions, and somehow our import, we have 3 import codes that affect fabricated structural steel, got listed in there. So we've been trying to advocate to have those import codes taken off the exemption list. And we really found that they helped. Initially, at least the uncertainty of the tariffs really helped. We have been producing well below 50% capacity in our shop and in New England because of the foreign competition and the threat of the tariffs. We've seen a significant influx in jobs awarded. But overall, the jobs in the economy are smaller.
Interesting.
But
So you're actually saying something. The point of this interview is not political, but policies do matter. You're a man. You're and I want to ask you in a moment where you get a lot of your steel from, but Novell Ironworks. But what you just said is factual, and you said that Canada was targeting New England's business that competing with you, and they had kind of an unfair playing field. So the perception is that the United States is being the big bad guy to Canada, trying to even the tariff thing. And you're saying that's not necessarily the case.
No, because we've been fighting for Buy American policies for a couple decades in New England, because you figure public dollars, and we always have to remember the government doesn't make money. They take money. They take our public dollars, they take our tax dollars, and that money is supposed to be reinvested into our communities to take care of our communities, our individuals, our people at risk. So, for instance, in Massachusetts, over 90% of the public schools, built by public dollars again, are built by foreign communities. So research shows that for every dollar in construction, $1.50 gets reinvested into community. So I get $1 from my contract to build the school. I pay my employees. They go out and go food shopping. They go to the local bars. They go to the grocery stores.
Right.
So that dollar gets reinvested. So $1.50.
Right.
But if we buy a school from a foreign company, that dollar goes out of the country and gets reinvested in their community. So it's really important that we buy American, and we've been pushing very hard. And I have to say, New Hampshire is the first one in New England to get Buy American legislation passed. We have a bill today being heard in Massachusetts, and we're working on all the states because it's really important to reinvest in our community.
Interesting. Listening to Holly Novoleski, she's the CEO. She runs Novel Ironworks over on the Seacoast and goes back to 1956. Where do you get your materials, your steel from? The bottom line, I guess I'm not a steel expert, but where do you get your ingredient? Where do you get the raw material? We
only buy domestic unless there's a piece a size that doesn't get milled here in the United States, and that's usually the big jumbo sizes, and that we would have to go to Europe. But we buy domestic, and it's mostly out of Arkansas and such, Nucor.
Interesting. Yeah. How many employees now, Holly, roughly?
So we're about 100 between the erection and the fabrication. Prior to COVID, we were probably closer to 150.
Yeah. Wow. How many years have you been running the company?
So my dad passed in 99. So I've been here, for a while. And my son now has stepped up.
You kind of know the business, as they say.
Yeah. We all grew up in it. Everyone in my family, we were the blueprint girl, the errand girl.
Do you ever go out to the job sites and they say, oh, here comes Holly. We better make sure we're building this huge thing correctly?
I think they say it when I walk in the office.
Well, I like it. So are you, because no one really knows, yours included. I'm fascinated with this economy. Is the first time in my life, Holly, where I can't really read it. I'm talking more locally, New England. I can't understand the incredible home prices being supported, still not coming down. I mean, people are paying it was just a national article. I'm sorry, an article in England about New England and New Hampshire in particular, just the rising home cost, the house cost. And I'm just looking at this going, it's not coming down. People want to be here. I get it. They're coming in from other states. I wouldn't want to live in New York or New Jersey or Connecticut or California either, but wow. But you're a good barometer. Are you bullish? Are you optimistic, realistic, pessimistic on, if you had to say the next 5 years for the company and you're talking about with your son and family about the business, are you bullish? Do you still or are you a little bit, hesitant?
It's been a rough, probably 5 years. It's gotten significantly more difficult in construction because of the foreign competition, but I am really optimistic. I think the focus on our trade deals and foreign competition in the uneven playing field has really brought to light what we in New England have been arguing for 2.5 decades.
Interesting.
So we were always like the canary in the coal mine.
Yep. You have a great background. I know you did run for Congress. You're also a good source out there. Tells me you have a doctorate and I don't know if it's psychiatric nursing and all that. So in that same source, by the way, another source tells me you had dinner with her last night. Hurricane Renee Palmer, good friend of mine, good friend of the show, good friend of veterans out there. And I don't know about you, but all she does, you have my sympathies last night at dinner, because all she does is yell at me sometimes during my show. So I hope she didn't yell at you at dinner last night. I hope she was respectful.
It was such a lovely dinner. She's such a great cook, but what a force of nature she is for
force
the good
of nature
of this community.
Force of nature. I've been trying to figure it out. I've been trying to figure it out for years. And that's one way to put it. All she does is yell at me.
She's like my hero. I mean, she gets things done, and she gets them done in style.
She just gives me that look, that Sicilian look. She'll just give me that look. Hey, Holly, thanks so much. Keep building, keep erecting all that stuff and the steel, and keep beating them all, and keep doing good for the Seacoast in New Hampshire. Thank you for being a champion of manufacturing. I'll tell Mike Cody, New Hampshire Business Review. It'd be a great article to do on you as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, and have a great day.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. We come back. John Decker, our own White House correspondent, back in a moment.
107.7 to Jack on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back. Really enjoyed that interview with a manufacturer, a person who deals with building steel in the region. Is a great sense to talk about the Canadian-U.S. tariff situation. Very, very interesting, I thought. All right, our own White House correspondent, John Decker. And speaking of the economy, the president will be on his way to Pennsylvania, I guess, to talk some artificial intelligence. But with John Decker, you never know. There's so much to cover. And he's, of course, at the White House covering it up close. John Decker, our own and talking about Russia, really, and the economy. And really, the president's looking on a new strategy, looking to kind of put a deadline on Vladimir Putin and playing a little tougher, combining sanctions and more weaponry to Ukraine.
Yeah, two big announcements from President Trump yesterday in the Oval Office with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte by his side. The first announcement that is if Russia does not come to any kind of peace as it relates to the war in Ukraine, does not stop the fighting within 50 days, that's when the U.S. would impose stiff trade tariffs on Russia. That's not such a big deal in terms of applying pressure on Russia. We only do about $3 billion worth of trade with Russia on an annual basis. But the idea here is that those tariffs would also be applied to any country that also does trade with Russia. So then you're talking about countries like China, India, and Brazil. They would face 100% trade tariffs on their goods coming into the U.S. The other big announcement, Jack, that has to do with what the president announced, and that is that NATO countries will be permitted to purchase ammunition and military equipment, including Patriot missile batteries, that those NATO countries will then convey to Ukraine. That's a big deal for Ukraine. I think it makes the war unwinnable now for Russia. And the idea here is to push Russia to the negotiating table.
And guess who's going to hate that is Vladimir Putin. He doesn't want anything going to NATO. And, you know, John Decker, I'm not in the NSA or the chiefs meetings with the president. You cover the president. But I really feel that the strategy for a while was be respectful, be pleasant with Putin, try and be the nice guy here. Try and back off the support of Ukraine a little bit and see what he wants. And it wasn't working. And now the strategy is the sanctions probably less, but this NATO move and increasing weaponry and defense systems for Ukraine. It's sending a clear message to Vladimir Putin that this president and this White House is serious, that they want some kind of de-escalation here. And it'll be interesting because the real thing is going to be the first real test of Putin that I've seen in a long time if he does back down or back off. My prediction, he backs down a little bit, but as the president says, is he going to follow that up with action of backing down versus just saying it and not really meaning it?
Well, that's exactly right, you know, because what the president has expressed frustration, even anger about, is that he has these conversations with Putin. He would describe them, President Trump would describe them as pleasant, as good, as nice. But then after the two hang up, hours later, record number of drone strikes launched at civilian areas in Ukraine. And the president doesn't like that. I think it shows disrespect to President Trump on the part of Vladimir Putin when he has those conversations with him, hangs up the phone, and then essentially ignores everything that they discussed during the past hour while they had that conversation.
And John, I think you're going to be going to Pennsylvania with the president. I just have to say, John, because I enjoy you being on my show so very, very much, I just have to chuckle because I've never seen a president who so openly talks to the world or the media about what's on his mind. Usually presidents at this point would be playing a chess game behind the scenes with Putin in Ukraine. Trump goes out and says, yeah, I have conversations with Putin. They're nice, they're pleasant, but it's meaningless. He fires missiles at night after being nice to me on the phone. What president would ever say that?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. You know, you want to know what the president's thinking? Just ask him a question. He'll answer it, and he'll tell you what he's thinking. He does not hide much as far as what the strategy is. Although, you know, at times when need be, the president, gives a head fake. You know, you think about what the president was saying ahead of those missile strikes at those Iranian nuclear sites. That caught Iran off guard, and it's because it was a head fake by the president that happened before that took place.
You know, it's hindsight, but the only clue he was giving out then was, hey, they should have taken the deal a month ago. It's too late.
Right.
Too late.
Exactly right.
Thanks, John.
And maybe the same thing will apply to Russia. Thanks a lot, Jack.
Thanks,
Talk
John.
to you soon.
And the other one I just had to say, at the height of the escalation between Israel and Iran, right after the U.S. successfully on that Saturday surprised the world, and especially Tehran with those strategic sites and the nuclear sites in Iran, the president was frustrated when Israel and they were still going back and forth after that. And he was tired, and you could see, and he goes, look, at these two have been fighting each other so long, they don't know what the F they're doing. And he said that you said that the F word. I'm like, oh my God, usually presidents will not broadcast this, but he speaks his mind on this stuff. Hey, I want to come back to some commentary after having Renee Palmer correctly corrected me, which she's one of the few people who enjoys doing that. J-Dog's another. My smarter, prettier, better half's another. But Novel Ironworks. I thought it was Novell, but Novel. And Holly Novaleski was just on, and they're big fabricators of steel. Like when you see a big building going up, the first thing you see after the excavation and the concrete foundation usually is the big steel girders. I'm not an engineer, but you know what I'm talking about. Big cranes, the big stuff. They've been doing it since 1956 on the seacoast. So I thought I'd ask her about the economy. Did you hear what she said? It was not a political interview. Hear what she said about Canada targeting New England for 20, 30 years, targeting them with cheaper steel. Hear what she said? Okay. So I'm just going to tell you something that hasn't been covered or said locally when it comes to the media on this Canada, US, Canada, and now with the new Prime Minister Carney back and forth with President Trump on trade and tariffs. I'm going to tell you the facts. Canada's been eating our lunch unfairly for decades. And I love all these people. And a lot of it's caught up with, because Trump and the Trump administration are doing it, it's wrong. Or we're the bully. Oh, Canada's such a nice, friendly nation. What did they ever do to us? I've heard this over and over again, and I've let it go in one ear and out the other without commentating. Let me just tell you. On a fishing boat in Maine years ago, in Maine, Millinocket, Maine, to tell you the truth, in the Savoy River, however you want to pronounce it, fishing with my late father-in-law, who knew a lot about timber and woodland management and pulp and paper and chip mills and biomass before it was popular. And he was head of a big international outfit in Orono, Maine. It was called Diamond Paper Mills at the time, Diamond Paper. And then he was into the woodland division. He would tell me on the boat that Canada was screwing us over on all the building stuff. And they were just getting these subsidies, and the tariffs were upside down. It was so hard as an American company to make it, he said. And we're going to lose all this, and Canada's going to take it over. We're going to lose all these great mills that employed hundreds and thousands of people in places like Millinocket, Maine. Have you ever been to Millinocket, Maine? I don't know if the McDonald's is still open there, because after the mill shut down, the economic blood drained out of the town. Groveton, New Hampshire. Berlin, New Hampshire. Have you ever heard of these places? Yeah, they used to be vibrant, booming. The Elks Lodge, the Moose Lodge, the stores, the drugstores, the shops, the restaurants, and then it just died because the jobs and the manufacturing went away, and a lot of it, Canada. How many dairy farms do you see around, folks, in New Hampshire and Maine? Where'd all those cows go? Where are the dairy farms? Oh, agriculture, Canada, unfair advantage for decades. And you just heard it from a steel fabricator. Steel, metal, buildings. What did she say? Holly, she's been doing this, her family, since 1956. The last 20 or 30 years, Canada has been unfairly targeting the business, undercutting us, cheaper steel. Oh, that would be Canada. Those nice people in Canada who put vinegar on French fries and play hockey and love America. They love us. Why are we playing hardball with Canada? And again, I just sometimes, and it's why I love news talk and radio, you can get into facts and interview someone like Holly. That was a 10 or 12-minute interview. We're going to replay it in the 11 o'clock hour. Listen to someone who hires a bunch of people, because one thing some people in their vitriolic, too often liberal politics don't understand, someone has to take the responsibility and the risk to open a business and to build stuff, to hire someone. And you heard what she said. Her employees, when they're doing well, they go out to the restaurants. They go out to the stores. They buy the goods in the economy. From her manufacturing jobs, she creates prosperity for the employees. The employees keep the company open. It's called business. It's not a bad thing. And too often businesses are made to be the bad players in the economy. You always hear some people say, oh, they're just helping big business. Tax cuts only help the wealthy. All this stuff. Ronald Reagan talked about when he was president. I don't know if you remember him, but I just love this sympathetic tone of Canada. What a nice nation. And they're good people. I love Canada. Don't get me wrong. I spent time there as a kid. I really did. Swear to God. Drummondville, Quebec. I stayed with Michel Fleury and his family during some hockey tournaments with the Boston area when I grew up. I love Canada. Went to the University of Vermont, was over in Montreal a lot. I love Quebec. I do like and the Canadian people. It's a huge country. I love it. But I'll tell you right now, they have been eating our lunch because of unfair trade, period, in wood and paper and pulp, in agriculture. And you just heard a steel manufacturer say it. So next time you're in a setting and someone's bashing Trump for the Canadian trade stuff, maybe you can point out some facts, and maybe the person listening will be respectful enough and civil enough to let you enter into some facts. But sometimes people don't want to hear facts. That's when they start the name calling, by the way. Some commentary. 603-228-2080. But why don't you ask yourself, in northern New Hampshire, with all the politicians are talking about, we need jobs in northern New Hampshire. We need more in northern New Hampshire. They used to have more. They used to have more than a bartender in a restaurant job. No disrespect to hospitality. They used to have more in Berlin, New Hampshire. They used to have more in Groveton. They used to have more in Maine. They used to have more in Millinocket. They used to have more in these places when they had manufacturing until Canada took it away. We used to have more farms, dairy farms, until Canada and the unfair agriculture. They get what? They've been doing tariffs on us that make it prohibitive for a farmer to sell anything to Canada. And also, you just heard of manufacturing and steel. Like steel the metal, steel. So learn your facts, know your facts. The next time you want to talk trade with someone and thinks that Trump is crazy for playing hardball with countries like Canada. Oh, Canada. Some commentary, 603-228-2080. Back in a moment.
This is the Pulse of Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back on this Tuesday. We are looking at that hot, muggy stuff, humid and hot the next few days, J-Dog. And in Canada, there are still, maybe it's retaliation with the trade stuff that we, on top of the heat and humidity, we're going to get some smoke and fog and haze from the wildfires in Canada. We're going to, nothing we can do, but it's just that weather pattern we're in, J-Dog, as we get going. And all-star baseball game tonight. You got your hat on, the shirt. You've supported Major League Baseball, at least on the apparel side. You looking forward to, what is it, outside of Atlanta, the game?
It is, yeah. Cumberland is the place, Truist Park, Cumberland, Georgia. They don't play in Atlanta. They play in an unincorporated part of Atlanta, I guess, Cobb County, Truist Park. That's where the 2025 Major League Baseball All-Star Game will be tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And for the Red Sox, by the way, Garrett Crochet, the pitcher for the Red Sox, won't be playing because he had pitched earlier this weekend. So Alex Bregman might start. He was not going to start, but he might play. Aroldis Chapman, the closer for the Red Sox, he may play a factor in the game. We'll see. But for the Guardians, Steve Kwan is going to be on the bench for not the bench, but he's going to be a reserve. And Steve Vogt, the manager, reigning manager of the year in the American League, by the way, is on the bench for the American League squad because it's Aaron Boone's squad since he was the manager of the American League champion Yankees. Dave Roberts for the World Series champion Dodgers. So you're going to see the stars. You're going to see Aaron Judge. You're going to see Shohei Ohtani. You're going to see some new kids. They call this kid the Miz, Jacob Mizorowski. He's only played 5 games, but he's an all-star reserve for the Milwaukee Brewers. Throws 102 miles per hour. Paul Skeens starts again for the National League. He was the wonderkin last year. He's going to take on Tarek Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. So you got aces galore in this all-star game tonight, and should be fun and exciting. And they go back to their traditional uniforms, the ones they usually wear. They're not going to wear these goofy machinations of American League versus National League.
What about the Savannah Bananas? You don't like their uniform?
No, I like the Savannah Bananas. Keep that, though, for the Savannah Bananas and not Major League Baseball All-Star Game, because last year they looked like a bunch of clowns.
All right, good stuff. J-Dog, I did ask Brad if he could do a hit now, so let me know versus the top of the 10.
I'll let you know.
We have an in-studio guest I did not know about, but Sherry will tell us about it. No, it's okay.
For NHTI, so.
NHTI,
yep.
No, I'm kidding. We just had the folks in. We had a great segment.
Just wanted to say hi, that's all.
Oh, then you're here. Come on in. How are you? I didn't know if President Tompkins was back. But I want to just come back to this Canadian stuff. Have a seat. I wanted to just, I've watched, and I'm always amazed how news is covered. And I was in my WMUR TV days. And sometimes this is the problem. This is the problem with our national media, the mainstream media to a point, and that being a former news director here locally. Subjectivity does go into newscast. How do you think WMUR each night, and I spend a chunk of my life there, how do you think they decide in a newscast what goes first, second, third, fourth, and fifth? A human being makes that decision. Artificial intelligence is not there yet. So hot, humid weather might be a story tonight. It is right now up in their site. And how you cover a story like Trump tariffs. Do you ever notice how the national media will cover this? The perception with Canada in in New Hampshire and some of the politicians here, it's right down political lines. Like if you're a Democrat thinker, you can't stand much of what Donald Trump and the administration does anyway. I get that. I do. I understand this. I'm not living on another planet. However, when you hear stories like the Canadian tariffs, obviously Canada is a big physical country. They're on our rooftop, but they're not as big as our economy in the United States. So we're the big United States. There's a smaller Canada, and the perception on the news coverage locally, regionally, nationally has been, why is Trump beating up on Canada? What has Canada ever done to us? I've heard this. And as I said, unlike a lot of you, I spent time in Canada growing up. I lived with a family in Drummondville, Quebec. Each winter for a month or so, or when we go up there and play in hockey in Canada as a younger kid. And I went to college at University of Vermont. I mean, I went up in Canada. I love Canada. But the perception in the media is, Trump is beating up on Canada, being so unfair with his trade stuff. Tell me I'm wrong. And you know what? We just had a major manufacturer in the seacoast who makes steel fabrication, builds big commercial buildings like steel, the metal, steel. You can't have a commercial building, a hospital, without those steel girders. And Holly Novoleski just said for 20 years, Canada's been targeting New England's construction industry, and they have all these advantages on trade. Excuse me? They have all these advantages on trade. They've been cutting into our business for 20 years. My late father-in-law was in the timber, paper, manufacturing business, woods, paper, wood, magazines, when we used to have more of that. And he used to tell me that Canada's going to put all these northern New Hampshire, northern Maine mills and manufacturing out of business because of trade. How many dairy farms, when you drive around New Hampshire right now, do you see a lot of cows and dairy farms right now? Just asking a question. Oh, there's a lot more in Canada because of the trade and the tariff on agriculture, on goods that we are trying to export to them. So this guy comes along, his name is Donald Trump, and his administration, they place some tariffs on Canada. Justin Trudeau wasn't up for the fight, so he kind of bowed out, and a new Prime Minister, Carney, who's pretty effective Prime Minister for Canada, by the way. He's articulate, he's a he's pretty sharp, I give him credit, and he's trying to go toe-to-toe with us, but it's been lopsided for 20, 30 years. I don't know if you knew this. So when Trump talks about trade and tariffs, everyone goes, oh, why is he doing this? Was he nuts? Is he crazy? Why is he doing this? Why is he picking all these fights with countries like Japan and Canada? Well, we've been getting a bad deal for 20, 30 years. He wants to make some more stuff here. You may not like that, but we just had a steel manufacturer on saying that she's doing a little better right now because it's more even playing field with the tariffs that have been imposed. So it's made Canada, change how they're doing and where they're buying and sourcing their steel. That's kind of interesting to me. Now, Holly Novoleski from Novel Ironworks buys, I think I asked her, a lot of the steel, Arkansas, she said, all American. So that's interesting. But trade, manufacturing, Northern Maine, all these mills, Groveton, Berlin, where'd they go? I don't know. They just went away. All right. Hey, Google, AOX, play the pulse of an H. We have a very interesting 10 o'clock hour coming. Don't change a thing. Mike Cody, New Hampshire Business Review. Dean Spiliota, Southern Hampshire University. Hot and humid, back in a moment.